what are you in the Hall of Fame for? Is it? It's as a publicist.
It's not for fighting.
But you've done a lot of different things in boxing, like you
Ring
mentioned,
announcing.
yeah.
Publicist.
A little bit of promoting.
Promoting. I had a promoter's license. I also had a matchmaker's license. So it's just, and being old, you see, when you get to be really old, you're more inclined to be nominated for the Hall of Fame. So
that outlasted the competition.
Yeah. Here's my brag. I am the world's oldest boxing publicist. No contest.
Yeah, I guess so.
No contest. Murray and Bobby represented Ali in Zaire, and I represented George Foreman. Murray was a great old guy. A couple of New Yorkers. And Murray was an old-time boxing guy.
So you're holding up a magazine here. This is the latest magazine.
Ring magazine.
The latest Ring magazine.
Yeah.
And you see our cover there. We paid homage to our 1974 cover previewing the showdown between George Foreman, your guy, and the great Muhammad Ali.
But it was Video Techniques was the promoter.
That's right.
Oh
yeah. This is yeah. So this original cover, which was the preview to the Rumble in the Jungle before the fight was postponed, when it was supposed to happen in Zaire, Africa, in September of 1974. This cover was basically the official fight poster.
It was.
Right, which was probably put out by Video Techniques. What's with a promotional company having a name like Video Techniques?
It's because it used to be there was theater TV, okay? If you wanted to see Rocky Marciano defend his title, it wasn't on home television. You went to a movie theater and...
So you're talking about closed circuit.
Yeah. But it was called theater TV because it actually started in theaters and then it went into arenas and so on. And there was a projector that was used to project the image up on the movie screen. Well, that projector was Video Techniques. They owned projectors and they rented them out for special events throughout the country. That was their business, and then they kind of got into they signed George Foreman when he won the title from Frazier, and for a short time they were George's promoter.
I see. See, I didn't know that. I knew that Video Techniques was the lead promoter, the main promoter for Foreman Ali. I didn't know that they had a contract with George Foreman.
Yeah.
That was an interesting choice of Foreman to go with them as opposed to King or Bob Arum.
Yeah, it was interesting because, of course, everybody wants a heavyweight champion, and he was the undisputed heavyweight champion. Those were the old days when there was only one champion in each division.
And how controversial was it for this championship fight to take place in Zaire, Africa? Formerly the Congo, and now it's the Republic of Congo.
Yeah, it was the Congo, and then it became Zaire, and now it's back to the Congo.
But under a dictatorship, and a rather oppressive one.
Oh, Mobutu Sese Seko was the dictator for 35 years in Zaire. He pillaged the country. The country was rich in copper, in industrial diamonds, and uranium. Wow. It was a mineral-rich country, and he paid each fighter, Ali and Foreman, $5 million, which in 1974, absolutely unheard of.
Plus, that buys a lot of groceries in 74.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was unheard of. It was the largest purse in the history of boxing. And he guaranteed each of them $5 million, and that was out of his Swiss bank account. George was cut 5 days before the fight, cut sparring with the former California heavyweight champion, and so the fight couldn't happen when it was supposed to happen in September. So George isn't afraid of anything in the world except needles. Scared to death of needles, shots and stitches. He made him put butterflies on it. He wouldn't let him stitch it up. When we went over there, we had to have a series of shots to go to Zaire.
Right. So you don't get malaria or something like that. Right?
Oh, yeah. All kinds of things, all kinds of stuff. And we were all getting the shots at the training camp in Pleasanton, California on the Alameda County Fairgrounds. And when it came time for George to get his shots, here's a guy, I'm telling you, not afraid of anything. He was crying for his mother. George wanted to leave the country.
Right.
He hated it there. And the dictator would not allow him to leave.
And the reason we kind of tied these fights together, obviously they're heavyweights, but they both took place in exotic and controversial locales. So
there had never been a heavyweight title fight in Africa.
Right.
Later on, South Africa had some.
That's true. That's true.
But there had never been one in Africa. Well, certainly, I don't even know if they've ever had a professional boxing match in Saudi Arabia.
Well, yeah. And this is now the biggest prize in sports, the heavyweight championship, 3 major titles on the line, Andy Ruiz Jr. And Anthony Joshua.
Right.
So I'm curious your opinion of this rematch. Honestly, I can't call it. It's one of these matchups based on what happened in the first fight. I have no idea if Ruiz just has Joshua's number or if Ruiz caught Joshua by surprise, and the combination of a last-minute opponent coming in there, making his U.S. debut, the pressure of fighting at Madison Square Garden, underestimating this pudgy little guy who can really fight and is very athletic and is a real fighter, just was overwhelmed by the moment and that he can reset. It's like my mind says, yeah, he should be able to do that, because I was very high on Joshua, as I think
too.
you were as well.
I felt like he was the best heavyweight in the world.
Yeah.
And maybe a throwback to the golden age of heavyweights, which, I worked all those years on the heavyweight fights.
When you talk about the golden age of heavyweights, you're talking about the 1970s?
70s, yeah, and into the 80s, but there were so many great, all-time great heavyweights, Ali, Foreman, Frazier, Norton, and then you had about 10 or 15 heavyweights who you would rate as really good, like Jerry Quarry, Ernie Shavers, and on and on and on. Ron Lyle. I mean, there were so many really terrific heavyweights.
Yeah.
And I thought that Joshua might have been a throwback to those guys, and then he gets knocked out by a guy who, well, I'll just describe it this way. Fat people, including myself around the world, jumped and cheered when he scored that upset. Because, see, in other words, when I look at Joshua, pictures of Joshua, from the neck down, he looks like me. and how can a fat little guy like that destroy the Body Beautiful, which was Joshua? Not only the Body Beautiful, but he could fight.
Yeah.
He could fight. So who do I think is going to win the rematch? I think Joshua will, but who knows?
And why do you say that? Why do you? I mean,
because I'm thinking about Lennox Lewis and Ruiz, was it? Rockman. Lennox Lewis was a terrific heavyweight champion. He's in my top 10 all-time heavyweights. And he was making movies and doing kind of things and thinking he had an easy fight with Rockman, and he got knocked out. And then in the rematch...
And also kind of an exotic locale. That was South Africa.
That's right.
And kind of at altitude as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then in the rematch, I think he knocked out Rockman in 4 rounds. I think...
Yes.
So I'm kind of thinking about that. When a guy thinks he has an easy fight, not just the training, but mentally, this is going to be an easy fight. And I think that's what Joshua thought, and now he knows it's not easy, and now he knows it's serious, and I think he'll win. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Ruiz wins. What are the odds? Have you seen them?
I think Joshua is still the odds favorite, but slight.
Yeah.
It's not overwhelming odds favoring the Englishman.
Ali Liston won was 7-1. Ali was a 7-1 underdog.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that Liston was actually still a slight favorite going into the rematch, because there were enough people, at least among odds makers and some members of the media, that thought that Cassius Clay's victory was a fluke.
Yeah.
And Liston still had a lot of respect Not after that rematch, but going into that rematch.
Yeah.
And folks knew that Liston trained harder for the rematch than he did the first fight. And that rematch was also similar to the Foreman Ali fight. It was postponed. There was a postponement because Ali suffered a hernia.
Yeah.
And Liston kind of fell apart between the postponement, the date of the original fight and the postponement.
There is a theory. Malcolm X was murdered by the Muslims. He was, for a long time, he was the spokesperson for the black Muslims. And then he left the group and started his own deal.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't real popular with, the Muslims out of Chicago, Illinois. And
Right.
And he was murdered. He was murdered.
That was 65.
Yeah. And so there was a rumor that in the first fight, Cassius Clay was Cassius Clay. In the second fight, he was Muhammad Ali. And there was a rumor that Liston was going to be assassinated. And the high school gymnasium, what's the name of the town?
Lewiston, Maine.
Lewiston, Maine, yeah. It was in a high school gymnasium in Lewiston, Maine, and they had as many police there of all varieties, state, local, federal. They had as many police there as they had paid, paid ticket holders.
Yeah.
Because of the death threats and all the rumors are going along. So Liston was afraid that he was going to get assassinated, and that's why he was knocked out easily.
It's kind of like, let me get this thing over with.
He was really afraid.
Yeah,
he was afraid he was going to be shot.
Yeah, and that the fight was originally supposed to take place maybe in Boston or somewhere else.
Yeah,
and
in
they
a
were
big
kind of
city.
like, you know what, this is too controversial.
Yeah, it
This
winds
is a
up
mess.
in Lewiston, Maine,
Yeah.
the fight capital of the world.
Wow. Yeah.
But Jim Murray, the great Jim Murray, who was the #1 sports writer in the world at the time, he was syndicated in 175 newspapers. LA Times was his own paper. And Jim was a skeptic, and yet Jim said, I saw the punch and it was a great punch. He was sitting right at ringside. And
Larry Merchant says that as well.
yeah.
That he could see it from where he was sitting. Yeah. I think there was a punch, and I think he legitimately went down, but I think he could have got up quicker.
Well, that famous Neil Leifer picture where Ali's standing over him and he's saying, get up, because he didn't think he hit him hard enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, supposedly said, get up, sucker, nobody's going to believe this.
Yeah,
that
that's
took
right.
you out in one round.
That's right.
Yeah, so my theory is he could have got up, and he was like, nah, this is, you know what? Yeah, right, yeah, like Jack Johnson and Cuba. Right. So since we're on the subject of heavyweights, just this past weekend, Deontay Wilder defended his WBC title. Yeah. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, WBC titles, we've got, this is the original WBC title awarded to the winner of Foreman Ali in Zaire. And I can't get over how small it is. Like, the belt has seriously grown, like, especially for these heavyweights.
Yeah. George's first career, I used to call him George Forearms because he had huge arms, wide shoulders. He had a 31-inch waist.
Wow.
In his first career. I mean, he was he was like this. I mean,
well, Joshua reminded me of a young George Foreman in his body build and even the way his early style was, the way he would stalk guys behind a heavy jab.
The other guy who had the body beautiful was Kenny Norton.
Yeah.
Kenny Norton was...
and his waist is probably even more narrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Kenny Norton fought Ali 3 times. The first time in San Diego, I was at ringside sitting with the boxing commissioners, and Norton broke Ali's jaw, and Ali finished the fight. Norton got the decision, so Norton beat him the first time, but fight 2 and 3, they were all decisions, and you actually could have raised Norton's hand all 3 times. Norton had a style that really bothered Ali. On the other hand, when George Foreman fought Norton in Caracas, he almost knocked him out in the first round, and he knocked him out in the second round.
Yeah.
Joe Frazier and Ali fought 3 times, and it was hell. It was absolute hell. Especially the third fight in Manila. Neither fighter was the same after those fights.
Yeah.
George fights Frazier twice. In the first fight, when he won the title in Kingston, Jamaica, he knocked him down 6 times in 2 rounds. And one time, he knocked him up because he hit him with an uppercut, and Frazier was actually lifted by the punch. You know, they have pictures of that
both
too.
Feet off the canvas.
And then he fought in first one was in 1973. And then they fought again in 1976 in Long Island, and I was the matchmaker for that fight, by the way. And George knocked him out, Frazier out in the 4th round.
Yeah,
now,
4 or 5 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
dominated.
4. It was all about styles.
Yes.
In other words, they all were beating each other because of styles. So when you say, Joe Smith can't beat Joe Blow because he beat such and so on, forget about it. It's about styles.
Right. That logic doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And the best example of that are those heavyweights that I just mentioned.
Yeah.